Picture this with me. About 60 people gathered together in a room very much like this one. These 60 people are dressed alike, perfectly alike. They are in black from head to toe. They're seated in chairs identical to each other. 60 people dressed the same way, sitting in identical chairs, facing in the same direction. Then it gets a little bit uncomfortable because they're even sitting the same way. They have the same perfect posture. Their eyes are looking the exact same way. It's on the borderline of being creepy. They're like little robots. As a matter of fact, if you squint a little bit, it's like a clone army or a bunch of ninjas. You can almost hear "resistance is futile" coming out of the background. But they're not at all a clone army. They're not at all robots. They are as different as human beings can possibly be. For in fact, some of them come from every possible culture and background you can imagine. Some are coming from Macedonia, some from the Ukraine, some come from South Africa, from the Caribbean islands. There's at least 3 of them that come from Britain. One from this strange and mystical land called Idaho. Go Vandals, absolutely. But they are, if we look a little bit closer, all holding something. They're holding a musical instrument. 3 of them are oboists. There's a bunch of clarinetists. There's a flock of French horns. Let's see if I can keep that going. There's a troop of trumpets. Yeah. They all seem to be holding musical instruments because this is a special group of people. As different as they all are, they are a musical ensemble, a symphony orchestra or a concert band, a wind ensemble in the modern parlance. They are something special, a group, but they still have extraordinary individual identity. You see, the musician in the group, the individual, has created a sense of self-worth, which happened over years through extraordinary effort and dedication. It starts in this little, very closet-like room. We give them a euphemistic name like practice room. It's a closet. And you spend hour after hour in this closet, refining your craft, perfecting your instrument, giving yourself technique and alacrity over years and years so that you can personally make beautiful music. You might even find another musician to work with you. You actually pay them every week to sit next to you and tell you what you're doing right and actually an awful lot of what you're doing wrong. It's called your private music lessons. And over years, you get cajoled and inspired and berated into excellence. After all this, you create your voice, your individual, important voice. And with that comes an undeniable and indistinguishable self-worth. And that's what musicians bring with them to stage. We all have our self-worth. We all do it in our own way. If you're a chef, you have your own particular way of putting together textures and flavors and smells. If you're an accountant, you have a way of manipulating that chaos of numbers into something that actually makes sense and is organized. We all have our own voice, whether we're building houses or designing rockets or throwing a pot or healing others. We all find our own voice. And the musician, for reasons that are extraordinary, takes their own voice and they combine it with others on stage. And when they do that, something exceptional happens. They give up. They give up some fraction of themselves. They become part of the whole. And that moment is something we all need to learn from. When we all take this personal voice, this little slice of our own biography buried in every note, and we instead give it up to the need of the ensemble and meet that. It's an extraordinary thing. Music is personal, and it is universal. We all know that music is personal because we each have some piece of music, a selection, which seems to have been composed and performed just for us. We can bring it to our mind like that. It's the one that plays on the FM radio just when you need it. You know that piece? For those of us of a certain age, it's always Journey. I don't know why. But that special piece of music is something we create as the individual musician. And then we join together with others on stage and create something even greater. We give up of ourselves. And that's the special moment that it was worth identifying a little more closely. This moment when we give up of ourselves and give in to the ensemble. If you're in an ensemble, an orchestra, or a band, there's somebody in front. They are ostensibly your leader. We call them the conductor. This is the person who was chosen to have a career with their backside facing the audience. It's a little peculiar, actually. But what is their job? To coordinate all these wonderful individual musicians. What's not readily obvious, the conductor's true job, is to control the degree to which each of these musicians can, in fact, be independent and have their own voice. They imagine each of the players as having a little rheostat, one of those little dials on them, that goes from all the way to the left, you, to all the way to the right, we. And we have to control each one of those dials very specifically to make sure that our musicians have as much opportunity to be you as they possibly can, because they have earned the right to be independent musicians. There was a time when conductors spent their entire lifetimes focusing everyone's music to be exactly what they wanted. They put the dial all the way to me, and as opposed to leaving it on you. Now, the good news is that doesn't happen as much as anymore. Those conductors are by and large dead. But there's something there. The conductor's real job is to control those rheostats so that everyone can be themselves as much as is humanly possible. The great conductor knows, let them play. Let them play as much as you can. Leave the dial on me as much as possible for the individual player. So that's what we do. We try and let them become themselves to the furthest extent we can. There's something else in there, because that applies to all of us. We all have to become ourselves, but when we're assembling a group and leading a group, as a conductor does, we have to do all we can to leave those dials set on themselves. Let them have everything they possibly can that shows their self-worth. They've earned that self-worth. You see, the musician knows that they have earned self-worth, and they won't let anybody extinguish it. And the great conductor, or the great CEO, or the great president, or the great dean of a college also knows that you must leave that rheostat all the way over on independent for as long as you possibly can. We can't extinguish. We have to nurture and flourish. We have to cherish the individual and let it come out as much as is possible. That's what makes the great leader, whether they're on the podium or in the CEO's office. The great leader will let them play.